NewGenGamers.com.
Welcome everybody to another New Gen Gamers Console Wars of the Past. Today we are taking a look at the Atari 7800. Here is the Atari 7800 console. Not that you can see because of the glare, but there we go. There's the Atari 7800 Pro System.
Look at it shine.
It's really shiny. Okay, there's your basic power button. Another pause button on the console, which, as I said in the Master System one, I don't understand that. Select and reset.
Pretty basic.
On the front, you have your controller ports. And there's your basic one, which is the exact same as the 2600 one. So both of the inputs are exactly the same. As you can see, we have a 7800 controller here. This is a Pro line controller. And we have a 2600, both attached.
Yes, this is the classic Atari 2600 joystick design. This is the upgraded 1980s
Pro
Atari.
line.
Yes. Now, as you see here, we have the joypad, but we have the added swivel feature. Just like the paddles with the original Atari 2600, we get the paddle function.
Oh, don't worry, it's easy to confuse them.
Yes. And so you've got that and the two buttons.
So you get an extra fire button now.
But the two buttons are actually the same button. They're actually, if you hit one, you're hitting them both.
Okay.
So that's it.
Now, let me take a quick look at the back of the console here.
Now again, this design, as we'll compare this thing to the Master System and NES of the time, did not hold up once the other systems were on the market.
Yeah, the joypad kind of, the joystick basically went out of existence after that. Now here you have a power in, which is very exclusive to that. It's only takes that kind, I believe. You have your channel selector switch, I believe that is.
Yeah.
And the RF out.
That's it.
And that's pretty much it. They made this kind of a bare bones one. There wasn't really any bells and whistles. There was a supposed Laserdisc add-on that was supposed to come out, but I think they ditched that before the production run actually started.
And it was supposed to originally have an expansion port for all that stuff, and it could also supposedly run printers and other things, but nothing ever came of any of that. The system did so dismally that no other add-ons were released.
Now we're going to take a quick look at a few of the stellar titles for it. Here's Karateka, or however you want to pronounce
Karateka. Super game cartridge. This was to differentiate it from the regular game cartridges of the Atari 2600 era.
Now you'll see one screenshot on the back, and you'll notice the silver box design. They did this intentionally just so it didn't get confused with the 2600 cartridges, which were running with a red label design at the time.
Yeah, at the time they switched up the cartridge labels so you could see the difference. So you'll see 2600 cartridges of this era with bright red labels.
Yeah, and the 2600 number where the 7800 was before, like on this one. And the other thing with that is just to differentiate so people didn't get confused, because the cartridges look basically the same.
Yeah, same cartridge shape. Hey, why not? Why change it, they figured.
And you'll see they added a little bit of color to the Donkey Kong Jr. one here.
Very nice.
Yes, that's probably the best looking one we have. There's pole position 2. It also says clearly Atari 7800 Pro System. Pro System was the tagline for the console. Hat Trick, a hockey game for the 7800. And
now this was by Balicente. This was the company that Nolan Bushnell, the original founder of Atari, created after leaving the company. And as you'll see when we play this game, they didn't fare so well in the marketplace.
And we also have Crossbow, for the Atari 7800. See, it gives us a couple
Look at
screenshots
that
here.
action.
Yeah, this was actually one of the better ones for the system. We'll take a look at that, and you can judge for yourself.
Now, if we take one more look here at the cartridge slot, you'll see that it is the same as the 2600 slot, and that allowed for both cartridges to slide in. So it was fully backwards compatible with the 2600.
To every spec and detail, you would have full controller support, full game support, pretty much just a super powerful 2600. Even kind of ran on the same chip.
So here's the 1980s upgrade to the Atari, and a system that had potential, but as we'll talk about, the stumbling blocks that came along just never really succeeded in any way.
Alright, let's go up and play these. Welcome everybody to another Console Wars of the Past here at newgengamers.com, and for all of you on the interwebs, we are now going into the Atari 7800, and we're going to try out the launch game for the console, Pole Position 2.
This was a big game to bring home for this system. It was huge in the arcades, brought to us by Namco.
Back in 1982.
And a pretty good version of it. Not a bad port.
No, it's actually a really decent port. I like how this one handles. Like, with the NES, I think the one advantage that the Atari had over the Nintendo was the fact that you had the joystick, and it made racing games so much easier. Because trying to play a racing game with a D-pad was a little tough at first.
So that was the chief competitor for this system. The Atari 7800 was kind of a system that just missed its mark time and again, and really never lived up to any sort of expectation.
It was just too late onto the market, pretty much.
Too late, but it could have been there ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it was originally set to launch in 1984.
1984, which was prior to the Nintendo Entertainment System launching in America during the video game crash that Atari essentially caused.
Yeah.
So Atari and company worked on a new system to pick themselves up out of the crash. This brand new shiny Atari 7800 Pro system to replace the dismally failing Atari 5200
and the super aging 2600.
and their failing and not so successful computer market.
And, well, the main thing about that was this also kind of run on that same architecture. Like, this was built to work around that, but, and we'll go into more of that here in a little bit, but it worked off of that architecture.
Yeah, it was an 8-bit system, and
which is why we're showing it now and not back in the last one.
And it used the same processor that the Atari 2600 used and the NES, and each version had a slightly tweaked version of the processor, but they all had the same main processor, but you see what each company got out of each product.
Yeah, it's just what you do with it, really. It was a pretty powerful chip.
So, for 1984, this wasn't a bad system, but again, the system was not released in 1984 as it was originally intended.
Don Mallard, captain of the U.S. video game team.
When I'm not going for high scores in the arcades, I'm home playing games on my Atari 7800. As an expert, I like the 7800 because there are great arcade hits like Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong Jr.
Adventure games like Impossible Mission, sports games like Hat Trick and Real Sports Baseball, action games like Desert Falcon and Karateka, and the 7800 plays all the 2600 games.
As a consumer, I like the 7800 because most games cost under $20.
The Atari 7800, the choice of the experts.
NewGenGamers.com.